Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Now on this video, I'm going to talk to you about a low money down property strategy. And this is something called a lease option or a lease purchase option. So click on that like button. Don't forget to hit that bell notification so you don't miss any of my future videos. Let's get straight into this. So what are lease options? Options are a funding tool. They're not really a strategy, but they are used alongside your cash flow or your current profit strategy that you're using at the moment. So an option can allow you to have the option to purchase a property at a fixed price sometime in the future. Now it gives the option holder the option to buy at the pre-agreed price, but not the obligation. Now the vendor must sell at the agreed option price, provided the terms of the agreement have been met. So lease options are actually two different documents. The lease that allows you to operate the property, then the option to purchase the property at the end of the lease. So why might you be thinking, no way, not a chance, I can't do this, and why would the seller give me their future capital growth? Why would the seller give me their rental income? How can they trust what I do and what I say? Why don't they just sell the portfolio on the open market? And why should they take me seriously? I mean, they'd have to be mad, right? They'll be running away from me, just laughing. Now, this might be what the vendor is thinking. So as a vendor's perspective, they could be tired and maybe they want desperately to move on with their life, or maybe there's another reason such as health or something similar. Perhaps they can't dispose of the property sensibly via an agent for lots of different reasons. Maybe tenants will leave if the property is advertised and they don't want to have that risk. Tax and legislation burdens. We've got something called Section 24 tax now, which I'm sure you're aware of. Well, maybe now that's imposing on them. Or perhaps the vendor is just desperate for a solution. And life is always about perspective. So are you cap in hand, or are you offering an opportunity? Now, if we see this as offering an opportunity, then we'll start to believe in what we do a little bit more, and then we'll start to get more leads and more deals. Now, you must always consult with a legal advisor before going into any legal agreement, okay? That's a little bit of the disclaimer out of the way. So, why lease options? Number one, you don't need a deposit to purchase a property. So you don't need to put 25% deposit down. You don't need to pay stamp duty until you buy it. So there's very little in terms of cash that you need upon entry. And it gives you control of a property that you don't currently own, with the option to buy the property in the future. But the big thing is that you can actually cash flow the property right now. So where can we use options? Well, options are available everywhere, and it's a really big strategy that people use in the States for controlling property. But specifically for us, and if we're talking about big cash flow, big cash flow monthly strategies, then HMOs will lend themselves really well to options. That's houses in multiple occupation. That's where we have more than three people forming more than one household living in the same property. Because the cash flow will enable us to profit and be able to pay the owner a monthly income as well. They also work really well for serviced accommodation for the same reasons. And they can work with single let property if you're buying with a view to gaining planning permission. So you could take a single let on an option subject to obtaining planning permission. Then you could either sell the option on, or you could get the planning and you could purchase the house. And land purchases. So big companies will use options to be able to take a massive plot of land off a farmer subject to obtaining planning permission. And you may have heard of assisted sales. That's when you can take a property on an option, then refurbish the property, and then assign or sell the option to somebody else, and the fee would represent your profit. And that's a great way of what we call flipping property without actually owning it. So here's an example of a lease option offer. Now let's say you've been to a property, you like what you see and you'd like to put an offer in, but as a lease option because you don't have a huge pot of cash at the moment. So dear XYZ, thank you for taking the time on Wednesday to show me your property situated on All Saints Road. As mentioned at the time, I feel that the property is a great fit to my current portfolio, and I am really pleased to be able to make you an offer. As mentioned on Wednesday, I'm also working on other deals and must be mindful of my cash flow and my working capital. Currently, I'm not in the position to purchase immediately, but would like to make you an offer of an option to purchase in the future. And in the interim period, I will be happy to rent the property, providing you with regular monthly income. Please allow me to explain a little further. I'm happy to offer you the full asking price of X to complete on the purchase in 3 years' time. And in the meantime, if agreeable, I would rent or lease property from you and take over the full management at my own cost. I would propose occupying the property with my own tenants, which I will manage in its entirety. I will take over all the utility bills and the council tax. I will pay you a guaranteed fixed fee of X every month during the rental period, regardless of the rooms being empty or not. I will propose to purchase a property at the end of the agreement for X, subject to market conditions. This proposal will benefit you in many ways, and it will provide you with a fixed income during the rental term. It will take away most of the responsibility, allowing you a passive income for the duration of the agreement. I would absolutely love to chat with you further, as I'm sure that you have a lot of questions. Please do let me know when you have availability. I look forward to speaking soon. Rick. So there you have it. That's just a really easy example of an option proposal. And you'll notice here that we haven't used any terminology or acronyms. We've kept it really easy to understand. So, lease options, no jargon. I haven't done any misleading. I've been completely open and honest in that letter just to say, look, can't buy it now, would love to buy it in the future, but we won't guarantee the purchase in the future, subject to market conditions. So I've been very clear with my offer and I've been completely transparent. So what's the expectations? Well, some vendors will totally understand this and they'll totally welcome it. Some vendors won't understand it and they won't respond. So always make sure you follow up and try and get down to the nitty gritty. If they don't understand it, try and bring that to the table and ask them what it is that they don't get and they don't understand. So what next? Well, send an email with that letter, the document attached, and then call them to affirm that you've sent it. So you've written the letter, put it on an email, send it to the vendor, and then give them a call and say, hey, I've just sent you an offer. I'm sure you're going to be really super excited, just like me. Can't wait to hear back from you. And then leave it a couple of days and give them a call back. So if your offer's agreed, what do you do next? Panic. That's what you do next. Jump about and scream and go, oh, what do I do now? It's easy, don't worry. It's a simple process. Just follow these guidelines, okay? So now what we need to do is establish the responsibilities and the commitments that the owner has with any mortgage provider or any covenants on the title. So we need to make sure that you check on land registry that there are no restrictive covenants that won't allow you to use the property, for example, HMO purposes. We also need to make sure that the owner has got the consent to let with the mortgage provider as a HMO. Good? Excellent. Now let's get this one big thing out of the way, subletting. This word is really misunderstood because technically speaking, you're not subletting, it's not illegal anyway, but you're not subletting because you're not the tenant. So if the property has got a mortgage, then instead of using a lease with an option, we're going to use a management agreement with an option. So that's just an agreement that you would expect to use with an agent or something similar, and it shouldn't stop you then from going ahead with the lease option, with the managed option, because it's a completely separate agreement. All right. And it's not subletting. So while subletting will need the authority of any mortgage provider if you're using a lease, a management agreement wouldn't, because you're not subletting. Okay, so does the property have a mortgage? Is it up to date? Does the property allow for letting, HMO purposes? And those are the biggest hurdles. If the property does have a mortgage and it's not allowed to use as a HMO, then it's going to be difficult for you. So you might have to say, look, if you want to change your mortgage conditions, and that's cool. If you want to get in touch with your mortgage company and change the conditions, let me know. But they're probably not going to do that. So it might be a deal breaker for you. So as the property has a mortgage, it's unlikely that the owner will be given consent from the lender to operate the lease. So what now? In these circumstances, we would propose using a management agreement, which I've just mentioned, and a management agreement doesn't need consent from the lender. We would then attach the option to purchase to the management agreement, and now this will be called a managed option rather than a lease option. So what would you take responsibility for on a lease? Well, it really depends, and a deal is a deal. So you can negotiate all of these points, but generally speaking, we would be responsible for all internal refurbishment, all utilities during the contract period, tenant recruitment and management. The boiler and the alarm service could be the owners depending on the deal you strike. Alarms are quite expensive, so if they go wrong, sometimes it can be really expensive. So maybe something you want to try and give to the owner rather than you take responsibility for. We would be responsible for the gardening and the sort of low-line external decoration, any painting of doors and things. But the building, the main building and the structure should always be the responsibility of the owner. So then we would go to something called heads of terms. So you give the owner a heads of terms agreement that would have something like this: the name and address of all signees, the address of the property, the terms that you've agreed to, such as an option to purchase in 3 years for $270,000. And then during this time, the property will be controlled by X under the terms set out in the agreement. And then we have something called an option fee. Now, as this is a deed, then you need a consideration for that deed to be legally binding. And that consideration is usually a monetary value. It could be a peppercorn, but this will need to be applied to the agreement. So this is probably where you've heard before, buy a house for £1. Well, they're not actually buying the house for £1. What they're doing is they're controlling it for £1, which is a lease. You don't get to buy a house for £1. Now make sure you always use a lawyer, and we can recommend some lawyers. If you need recommendations, let me know. A family lawyer might not always understand the deal structure, so always make sure you choose the right person for the job. So I hope that was really useful for you. Whistle stop tour there on lease options. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you on the next workshop.